Hmm. Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Granville, and I am really the proud host of the show, The Physiology of Our Divinity. And I also founded a nonprofit called Mindful Presence that brings the gift of mindfulness, coherence, and controlled breathing to pediatric patients, families, and care providers. I'm also a mindfulness practitioner and coherence coach at the Center for Healing Neurology. And I have the honor of introducing one of my dear friends who we've never met in person, but we've played in the field before. And Tania Castillo, how are you?
Oh, I'm just great and so honored. And I feel such a joy in this now moment just being here with you. Thank you. And with
Oh,
everyone who is with us.
yeah, me too. I feel it as well. And it's that emergent total greater than the sum of its parts when two hearts get together and
Yes.
and more. So I'm going to go ahead and be official. I'm going to read your bio before we get started. So Tania Castillo, whose pen name is TC Aila, is the founder of InPassion Coaching, a safe space for the reunion of human and divine, through which she shares the compassionate breath and provides Isness mentoring. She likes to call herself a changeologist, a conscious explorer of the science of change. She has recently come up with Miracle Assistant as a perfect way to describe what she does on a daily basis, assisting people in creating and allowing miracles in their own lives as she goes about enjoying her own, in deep gratitude for the miracle it is. That's beautiful. You are a wordsmith, my dear.
It is my one of my greatest passions and started very, very early. So even before I could write, I was making up stories.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And one of the things I want to touch on, you talk about isness. What is isness?
Isness. So because the term divine and soul and God and all of these terms have been so loaded with different kinds of beliefs going this way or that way. Isness for me is a new, relatively new word, and so it hasn't got the same charge on it, but it means the same thing. Really, it means, I would say, it means our wholeness. Isness is just that beingness,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
like the isness kind of thing, the tone of it.
yeah. I do too. I do too. And I really resonate with a lot of the customization of words that you do. And when I hear isness, it is a more of a neutral term. It's not triggering, and what it really leads me into is being true and honest about what really is as well. Because when we are caught in a human winding that is not of our true nature, then we are not in that isness. We are not
Yes.
being what truly is. And many of the stories that I've gone through and the teachings that I've gone through and working with patients and families, we really get into trouble when we're not honest about where we truly are, what truly is in our life, and we get separated from divinity. And you talk about a safe place for the reunion of the human and divine. And I love that because my show is the physiology of our divinity, right? And my
Yeah.
programs are biohacking the physiology of our divinity. So I talk with my care recipients about us building a sanctuary space through breath and coherence where we can be who we truly are, and that's divinity. What say you about that, my dear?
I say exactly the same thing. That's
Yeah.
that's precisely what I call isness mentoring, and through the breath, creating precisely that space where we can relax enough to tap into that divinity. Because if we're caught up in tension, in anxiety, in stress, caught up in the mind, it's hard to tap into divinity just because it's not there. That's not where it resides. And it's an experience. So, just to say, it's not that it is wrong or right, because as conscious creators, even though many times we are unconscious creators, conscious or unconscious, we are given the birthright of free will. And that free will determines that the human facet of our divinity has total freedom to experience anything and everything. And so, of course, through that, we become aware of what it's like to experience ourselves in separation. And it has that purpose to be able to experience things that we would never be able to experience if we were constantly conscious and aware of our divinity, of our wholeness. We could never experience the range of emotions and the range of possibilities that are available in that separation. So, in a sense, only in the moment when it becomes like, okay, it's enough, like I've had enough of this kind of experience, not meaning that it's been too bad or too hard or whatever, because as a souled being, we are limitless and endless and eternal and infinite, and therefore nothing of this reality can destroy us. But there comes a moment when we have this kind of a clock inside, a kind of a feeling that says, I've had enough of this kind of experience. And that's where our divinity starts being felt, starts emerging, so to speak, starts being sensed as more tangible, as more real. There's something more. And it can be called many different things. It doesn't really matter what belief system a person is affiliated to. What matters is that feeling, that knowingness, that deep knowingness, that sense that there is something more. And then once a human being senses that, it's a never-ending journey. So it's like you sense that and you just can't turn your back on that.
Mm-hmm.
You can sometimes get frightened. You can sometimes sense it's, oh my God, this is too much. This is too good to be true. This is something, whatever. And for some period of time, get, so to speak, lost again. But once we have tapped into that, it never leaves us alone. We just want to go back to that sense, to that knowingness, to that certainty of fulfillment, because it resides in all of us, that certainty of fulfillment. That's why there is this need to search for more and to find something. Of course, only to realize there's nothing to search and nothing to find.
Yeah.
Because it's just all here, all now. But searching is part of the quest of stopping the search. And finding or needing to find is part of the quest of realizing there is nothing to search and nothing to find. So it just all to say that there has never been anything wrong about us, about you, about me, about any one of us here, in the sense that we cannot be broken. We can seem to be broken, we can seem to be lost, and these are all experiences that we have as a human facet of our divinity, and oblivious of the fact that we are that divinity, until the moment when it becomes so apparent that they can't just be that we realize, oh, wait a minute, what else am I?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautifully expressed. And it leads into so much, Tania, because When you look at like one of the most beautiful quotes is, we are not humans looking for a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings looking for a human experience, right? And
Yeah.
so we come here, and a couple of weeks ago, I had the beautiful soul Jo Bolte Taylor on, where she talks about the right brain of divinity and the left brain of humanity, the 3D world. And the corpus callosum is the nerve bundle that connects our two brains together. And it serves as a bridge and a veil, because we
Mm.
come here with a veil between our soul contract and divinity and what appears to be our human self. And we get caught along this path of being the human, trying to find a spiritual experience. So it's kind of a conundrum, because here we are being enlightening and awakening, but yet part of the human experience is to be asleep. So there is a
Yes.
veil there that we're lifting. And how does that play in? I mean, this is a deep question, I know, but we come here with a soul journey, a soul contract, and we have a human experience and free will. And part of the free will is searching for consciousness and awakening and divinity, which takes away the veil of our contract. So how do we become enlightened and still fulfill our contract, our journey?
Well, it's interesting because I'll go back to many times when I'm working with people, this issue of being somehow angry at God, at soul, at essence, at isness, at divinity comes up very, very often. And for many, it started right from the first incarnation, right from the moment that on the other side, the wholeness of who we are, the I am, decided, wow, let's go and have that experience there. Wow, what possibilities are available. And our I am knew that no matter how dark or painful or whatever experience would be, that it was nothing, that it would never be lost, that nothing would ever corrupt it. But it didn't know what it's like to be in those experiences. And that was the passion, is what is it like to be more than this all that I am?
Mm-hmm.
And so the experience starts. And for many, it happens that as soon as the the human loses the connection in order to be able to go through these experiences without the consciousness of being a divine human,
Mm-hmm.
there is immediately this, take me away from here. I don't want to be here. What am I doing here? What is this? What is this body? What is this kind of constriction? What is this thing here? I don't want to be stuck here. And then there is lifetime upon lifetime just trying to escape this experience, and trying and trying and trying in so many ways, until of course it doesn't work, right? Because there is no way to escape this reality, since it has been chosen by higher consciousness. So the therefore the veil of forgetfulness having to be in place. And but then the other part of the anger is, okay, so if I am this big magnificent being, why on earth didn't this magnificent being come and sort of, take me out of this rubbish experience I'm having or whatever? Like, I suffered. I really suffered hard. Why? Why, if I am God also, how is it that God could not save me from my perils? And so that's another reason for being angry at divinity.
Yeah.
But it's just a way of keeping the separation in place, right?
Yeah.
And all the while, our divinity is placidly, compassionately enjoying each and every experience, in the sense that not enjoying in the way we would perceive it in the mind, but enjoying it in the sense that, oh, wow, this is possible. Oh, and this too, and this and this. Because the wholeness of who we are knows that all of those experiences, no matter how displaced or how separate they are, because then we get split in myriad of personalities, myriad of experiences, myriad of lifetimes, and we get caught here and there and wherever, like thousands of different places. And no matter how big that split is, that dissociation, the I am knows that the whole purpose of that is to then bring it all back into that wholeness. And now, if anyone can imagine what it's like to just be this magnificence and then have the sum total of all of those experiences and the richness of them, because no matter how dark an experience is, it holds a richness. Our divinity is in each of those experiences. So now bringing all of that back, consciously choosing to allow that to trickle back into the source of everything, of us. Imagine, wow, it expands consciousness in a way that would not be possible without those endless possibilities. And it also brings the advent of love, because love per se doesn't exist only at a soul level, or at the I am level, doesn't know love as love, the love that we feel when we experience unconditional love, when we experience the compassion of soul. So that love affair, I mean love between human and divine, that love affair is only possible if there seems to be two. And therefore, then the human can perceive the love, the endless compassion that soul has for the human. And the soul obviously can also perceive what this human is capable of, even not knowing that it is this, that it is the divinity. Simply, it doesn't remember.
Yeah,
And
the
so,
illusion of duality, exactly.
exactly. That is what provides the advent of love. So I'm not talking here about relationships and sort of romantic love. I'm talking about a love that is the grandest possible love affair there can be. But it feels like the love in a relationship, but it has some attributes that those loves do not have, which is permanence, eternity. The only love we know will never go away, will never dissipate, is the love of divine for the human self, for the human being.
Yeah,
That is the only one that is eternal.
the birthplace for all human experience and where we all return. Yes.
So, continuing in response to your question or declaration, as how is it that we come on one hand to experience that separation, that duality, and on the other hand to come back to the wholeness? Because if we were not experiencing that duality and that richness that is possible through it, we would not be enriching the wholeness. So there would be no point in this experience. So the whole point is to get separated and then to reunite back again. But the reunion will never ever be what it was. So basically, once we have come by way of earth, we will not go back to what we were we are always expanding into something else beyond
Mhm.
what we were before.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's basically the whole point of the experience, which is, when seen without judgment, the most beautiful possibility of creation.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's and again beautifully expressed. You are a wordsmith, and you free flow beautifully. And um, it's the perception of villains, of evil, of good versus bad, and our judgment of that. But it's all there. I mean, if you look at the soul contract and someone raises their hand to be the victim, somebody has to raise their hand to be the villain. So that was a real paradigm shifting reality for me. Um, and it affects the way we view God. And there's a book I read early on by Deepak Chopra called The Future of God, where he says we need a God 2.0, where we're not thinking it's a bearded white man sitting on a cloud pulling strings and sending people to hell.
Mm.
Divinity, God, is a ever growing experience of creation and possibilities. And you make a statement that I really resonate with, that every human experience is expanding the consciousness of all of us. Consciousness, creation wants to learn about every possible human experience and relation from human to divinity. So that really puts a different outlook on villains and things that go wrong in life. And I've heard
Yeah.
you speak on that a little bit. Could you elaborate a little?
Today I had an interesting experience with a client, and so I'll share the experience because no one knows who the client is anyway. So,
Yes, please.
so just to illustrate this. So at one point, this person had been very wise and had been having trouble being amongst other humans because of the density of consciousness at that time, and so lived somewhere out in the country, in the forest. But people would come to this person for healing because this person was so wise. And yet, this person felt, I can't express my truth for two reasons. One, because people could not really grasp it, so there was no point. And two, because there was definitely a fear of persecution, of elimination, which is what happened. So at one point, this person is on the stake being burnt and feeling extremely angry at those priests who were responsible for putting the person on the stake, and feeling, how can they? I mean, they haven't even got the first idea about what truth is. How could they be doing this to me? I will for sure come back and I will make it. I will be able to express my truth and to be this fully, but in anger, right?
Mhm.
So at that point, I asked the question, well, please sense. So why wasn't it in that moment that you ascended? And it was really clear. Oh, because my I am, my soul, I am, and soul is the part that comes into the body, wanted to be here now because this massive awakening
Mhm.
was planned, was possible. Not necessarily that it would be achieved, but the possibility of it was on this in the stars, was provided, and I wanted to be here now. Okay, so you needed to provide yourself with a hard enough death that you could then stay along for a few more centuries and be here now.
Mm.
Yes, that's exactly true. So, in fact, you agreed with these priests to be burnt on the stake so that it could keep you caught here for a while longer, that you could be here now in this lifetime, which is the lifetime of your enlightenment, of your ascension.
Mm.
So, could you now thank these men for having provided you with exactly what you wanted?
Wow.
And in
Wow.
this,
Mhm.
the blame is released, the anger is released, the duality disappears. Because in that moment, you realize, wait a minute, it's not about me and them. We're all in it together. We've agreed upon this. And then another interesting thing is, yes, I was burnt on the stake, but I'm here now. So, oh, I wasn't destroyed?
Mhm. Never, never.
And so I realize there are many people who don't believe even in reincarnation and all of that. It doesn't really matter. It really does not matter for one simple reason. Whatever one believes in, just as long as one can feel the peace with whatever is being shared here, that's it. So, not allowing a belief system to be a blockage between being able to sense and allow, and wanting to say, no, 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 that's impossible because that doesn't exist, or so on.
Mhm.
So, just to say that many times the belief systems that we carry are our greatest burden and obstacle towards really feeling this connection to divinity, because this connection is void of also, it's void of a need for belief systems even. So it's more about the feeling, it's more about the sense, more about what it, like a person can come and say, you know, I'm an atheist. Great, fantastic. It doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
In a sense, we are too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, you know,
Depending on who you're talking to, right?
exactly. So um, here it's not about whether, oh, no, wait a minute, what you're saying is sinful or whatever is feeling.
Mhm.
Just allowing the feeling. Does it ring true to you? Does it make you feel at peace? That's it.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. And I agree with that. And it's from that place, like you say, regardless of culture or upbringing or denomination, there is a sense that we all carry. And it is the connection from our soul to our heart, and then our heart to our mind body.
Yeah.
And I reflect on my situation with my son McCoy, where when I got his diagnosis of leukemia, untreatable leukemia at 4 years old, I was angry. How could I believe in a God that would allow this to happen to my beautiful 4-year-old? I was caught, just smacked in the face with this human reality, and I was just shaken. Everything I thought I knew for sure was shattered. And in a moment of him struggling for breath, I fell to my knees and realized God gave me everything I needed. Divinity, God, whatever we call it, gave me everything I needed to help him the most. And there, right there, is where I felt that feeling you're talking about, that I was given peace and love and strength and security in the moment of crisis by just being open.
Yeah.
And it, like I say, you can't be coherent in your body if you're not coherent with spirit, if you're out of alignment with spirit, you can never be coherent in your body, in your mind, body, and heart and soul connection. So life has a way of giving you that shot, that fall, that
Yeah.
diagnosis, that trauma, where we look at it as a bad thing. But it's like you make a comment like breaking, snapping makes a crack where the light gets in, where divinity comes in. And that really, really resonates with me.
I'd like to ask you a question because that's something that people usually ask a lot.
Yeah.
And so, because you are in that experience, I'm sure you can share it really beautifully. Is that so? Um, we both believe that for there to be an imbalance in the body, there has to be an imbalance somewhere
Mhm.
within our spirit, mind, and body connection, right?
Yes.
And so, if a child is born innocent, this is the question that people many times ask. If a child is born innocent, how is it that they experience then something deadly like cancer or other kinds of things? Could you please share your wisdom on that?
Well, yeah. My insight on that is very personal, and it was a complete paradigm shift in what I believed um, prior to my son's diagnosis, in that I looked at pedophiles and villains and murderers as evil, not like acting on the devil or anything like that, but just evil. And I I was under the impression, the illusion that, why do bad things happen to good people? That
Yeah.
common thing. Why do things happen to good people? I'm doing it. I'm praying. I'm compassionate. I'm loving. How could this happen? But it was with a theta healer named Ron Oren, who I hope to have on the show soon, that, sitting at the Ronald McDonald House, Skyping with him in Brazil or Russia or wherever he was at the time, is the question, Jeff, you're on top of this, you're doing everything you can, but what if you do everything right and he still has to pass away to fulfill his soul contract? And it was just, wow, it was a paradigm shifting moment where divinity came in and just knocked down all of those human assumptions and predispositions and beliefs in one fell swoop, where you look at someone like my son McCoy and you say, how could I believe in a God that would allow this to happen to a 4-year-old? Well, now I'm thinking, wait a minute, McCoy is an old soul. He stood up and said, nobody has experienced life from this point of consciousness. I'm the one to do it. I will do
Yeah.
it. And he told me that if he has to die to fulfill the contract, then he will die regardless of what you do, which was very scary, but freeing. It liberated me from that human winding of an agenda for an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And it left me open to divinity. And that's when I got the downloads of clarity of what to do for him to get him through it. And so for me, it was that situation that completely gave me the paradigm shift of, oh, wait a minute, this is not a bad situation. This is a chosen situation, and I'm not in charge.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
It
what it
does.
was
It
for
does.
me.
That's exactly what I was looking at, and the fact that, so you see, this old soul, he could choose to go through that experience in contract with you, an old soul as well, for you to have your paradigm shift as well in this very same lifetime. So the love, and here is where love gains a different perspective. The love was so grand, so immense, that this soul could come into a body that was going to develop this situation. And you see, from, as you are saying, from the point of the soul, it doesn't really matter whether it's gonna die or live, or it's gonna die 2 days after it's born, or 30 years after, or 100. It doesn't matter, because from a soul perspective, there is this experience to be had for the period that it is available. And sometimes also there are the situations where a child is born and dies immediately, for instance, and probably just needing to come by way of earth for that short instant before going back to the other side, and then eventually coming again for a different kind of experience or whatever. I mean, the myriad of possibilities of what a soul can come and experience through human form is so vast, so wide, that our human concepts cannot, no matter how much we try, grasp it. Only if we release those concepts, like you were invited and had to do at some point, because otherwise it would have been too painful to keep them.
Mm-hmm.
Only
Yeah.
when we release the concepts can we see further. So going back to what I was sharing, that the belief systems are the blockages. If you remove them, you find freedom, you find divinity. You realize God. You realize God. And this child, which is not really a child, but who is in a child's body for now,
Mm-hmm.
made this contract with you even before you came in. Okay, let's do this. Let's go ahead and do this. Because in a sense, for your soul, I mean, what is it that a father can experience that will be so disruptive, that it will make him see things in a whole new perspective?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's this possibility of death, this possibility of an illness that seems to be incurable, and then creating the miracle that you have created together, and realizing that the possibilities go even beyond what was perceived to be, even at the time you changed and shifted your paradigm. Still, you keep on discovering more miraculous possibilities.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
basically, you've gifted each other with endless miracles constantly. I mean, what greater gift could a soul contract bring?
Yes. Yes. And thank you for seeing that and expressing that so beautifully, because as I've stated in my other shows and on Facebook, is that one of the most innate needs of a human is to feel felt and to be seen. And
Yeah.
that's the point where we can start to heal, to be seen where you truly are. And this goes back to the isness, you know, where you really are, what truly is, and to be seen and felt is what makes this so divine. And I want to elaborate in that the feeling of divinity inside of me during that time is my new compass. It's a clarity to my soul's calling and my contract, that when you're on course, you feel it. It's expansive in your body. And when it's something against that, it's very contractive. You know, it's left brain, it's triggers, it's subconscious. Like you say, we create whether we're conscious of it or not. We're constantly creating. Carl Jung, until we bring the subconscious conscious, it'll control our life, and we'll call it fate, right? So
Yeah.
we're going to create one way or the other. But the moment of that paradigm shift where I was open to divinity, my love for my son, his love and trust for me, and my love and trust in divinity, that there's more to it than me, that I don't have to be the ego human that's trying to control an outcome, that I'm in this with divinity, and divinity comes through me, through my son, and through all of us. And whenever I get caught up in a human winding now of this isn't going fast enough, or I'm coming against roadblocks, I just go back to the center of that vortex, the need at the hospital, the need of where this, what we're bringing through divinity into humanity for all the cries and screams of the kids in the beds. And to me, once that was shown to me and I felt it within my body, my connection to my heart and soul, that's now my new compass. That's now my new north. And it really does play out. And I agree, there's miracle after miracle available to us when we're in that safe space, when we're in that sanctuary space, and we're reuniting human and divinity, as you say.
And how, if like, do you also propose to the parents that are in these situations this possibility? It's, you don't get to decide the outcomes.
Mhm.
What are the reactions, or do people accept this, or what do you find?
Well, it's all over the spectrum. As you know, people are humans and they are in alignment with divinity somehow, some degree, and everybody's at a different fractal of awakening, a different level of awakening. So, like you, I enter a room open. I don't know if the family is atheist or Christian, Catholic. I don't know. I have to go in neutral and read the room, try to feel the room and speak their language, relate to them, and see where they're at, where they actually are at that moment. Not everybody in that environment where their child has just received a diagnosis is open to the fact that somehow their child agreed to this. That is very offensive to some people. And it's a matter of timing. It has to be something they're ready to hear, or at a place where they're really, really stuck, and needing to hear that is what sets them free.
Yeah.
So I really have to be careful with that and respect where people are. And then what I go by is that compass. I don't have the human winding of when can I say it? When can I say it? When can I say
You
it?
feel it.
I feel it. And it's just a matter of timing. And I've learned this. It is another lesson from divinity, is like, I get called to the hospital, and have you ever worked with a 2-year-old that has X, certain disease? And I'm like, no, I haven't. And then I sit and I'm like, who am I? Who am I to think I have anything to offer? And I get a little triggered and afraid, and it's like nervous. And I think I've learned through divinity to stop and just say, no, just show up. Just show up and be there with them. And divinity will speak through you. And it happens, and it works every time. It's,
Yeah.
I'm sure that I put my foot in my mouth once in a while, or I don't say the right thing. I'm not reading the signals perfectly. Of course, I'm human. I'm a human hybrid with divinity. But as long as I'm aware of it and I'm open to that, consciousness, divinity will speak. And,
Yes.
it's like I say with, when you're in necessity is the mother of invention, right? When you're in the moment with the need, your heart is in it. You're in right brain connection to divinity. And that's where every song, every poem, every invention, every download to humanity comes through that union of divinity. So when I show up, when I just show up and I don't have a human agenda, divinity always speaks, and it's usually the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether they know it or not at the time, it might just be a seed for later. But yeah,
Yeah.
I love how
That's
you've switched.
exactly my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And, it's interesting how you've turned the table, Tanya, and become the interviewer. But I love that, because this is not just a structured interview. This is a conversation. And I
Yeah,
always say that we're just visiting,
that's
and
it.
I love it. And it brings out some very beautiful divine messages. So I'm
Definitely.
wide open.
Because each one of us has this unique sum total of experiences.
Yeah.
And so the unique sum total of your experiences is so absolutely different from the unique sum total of mine that whatever you have to share, only you can share in that precise way. And whatever I have to share, only I can share. And so by us both sharing from our sum total of experiences with all of this connection with divinity and what it was like without being connected, we can enrich each other and, of course, enrich everyone or anyone who is listening. And just like you, when I have when I have sessions with people or whatever, like whenever I am invited to share whatever is to be shared, it just comes. It just comes. There is no question about it. There is no doubt. And even if sometimes what I have to share or communicate seems to be, um, ooh, ooh.
Should I really say
Anyway,
that? Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Anyway, if it's coming, I have to say it. It's like my consciousness does not leave me alone until I say it.
No,
And
no,
so I just have to say it.
yeah, I
And the
truly believe that.
outcome, the outcome is always beautiful in the sense that even very seldom, very, very seldom, someone might get triggered and not want to speak to me ever again. Fine, it doesn't matter. Because it's not about me. It doesn't matter whether a person likes me or doesn't like me or approves or doesn't approve. It's about them, themselves. And so what happens in those very rare occasions, it has happened that years later a person comes back and says, "You know what? Thank you. Thank you so much for that thing you said or whatever in that moment, because that changed my whole life from then on."
Yeah,
And even if that doesn't happen, if that person doesn't come back, but it happens, it has happened more than once, even if it doesn't matter. Because as I was saying, it's not about me, it's just about what's coming through. You express it, it's done. Whichever way it's going to be received, that already is not my thing to define. I cannot define that.
yeah, yeah. And that's a beautiful affirmation for me, Tanya, because like I said, when we were doing a little warm-up conversation, you've been doing this for a long time, and I'm relatively new to this. And it's extremely liberating to feel that and hear that and truly trust that. And I believe that once divinity finds a mouthpiece, a heart to speak through,
Yeah.
it doesn't want to leave it alone. It wants to, okay, I've got an outlet. Now I'm going to start speaking through this outlet, and pretty soon you're flooded. And I'm just basking in that. I just love that. And that's, one of the main reasons that we have such a beautiful connection and we parallel each other so much, because we're talking about universal truths. We're talking about divine truths that work through all of us. It's available to all of us.
Every
And
single human being.
yeah, yeah. And it's very liberating. It takes so much pressure off the human side to really truly know this. It's like I say, biology beyond beliefs is the physiology of knowing. And once you know it and you have the physiology of that knowing, you can't get away from that. Once you felt that truth of divinity in you, everything else pales.
Yes. And as I said earlier, one can go astray for a while in the sense that astray, and I don't want to be judgmental here when I say go astray. I mean, someone might some for a while forget that and feel bad and feel like a victim or whatever for a while, but then always there will be this, no, 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 wait a minute. This is not who I am. This is not what I want to experience. And the more there is that connection, the harder it is to be in any other kind of consciousness,
Yeah,
because it simply becomes too painful.
yeah,
It just becomes unbearable.
yeah.
So, and it's that unbearable that helps a person to come back to, oh no, no, wait a minute. This is my compass. This is what I want to be in.
Right, because you get the contrast that you've never had before. Once I felt that depth and richness of divinity and the truth and the compass, then everything else that's not that is more glaringly, obviously not that, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
your compass becomes more refined and tuned and practiced. And it's just an amazing gift. It is the greatest gift I've received, and the greatest gift I could ever give is that testimony, that acknowledgement of how things used to be, and that yes, it did take the diagnosis of my son to to actualize, physically manifest the potential of divinity through me. So I have no problem admitting I probably wouldn't be sitting here if my son hadn't got leukemia. So what appeared to be a bad thing turned out to be the greatest gift we could have ever received.
A silver lining.
Silver lining. And I say that without us creating our own silver linings, they'd all just be dark clouds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also find, and I'm sure you do too, that there's also this, the level of compassion grows precisely for the fact that you know that because you have that contrast, that now you know a different kind of experience,
Yeah.
and you know how much the other experience hurts.
Yeah.
And you know also how tricky things can be and sticky and whatever. And the level of compassion grows. And the level of compassion grows does not mean that then you just want to go out and save everyone. It means exactly the opposite. It means that you realize that each one is so entitled to that exact experience that they're having. And without it, they are not fulfilling whatever they are to be fulfilling within that experience. And so it's not your position to remove that person from that if that's what they're supposed to be living. But on the other hand, if this person approaches you, comes your way, you have that level of compassion where you are not pitying this person, you are seeing this person as a beautiful, magnificent creator. And because you can see this in that person, you can provide an assistance that is so much more valuable, because you are not assisting victimhood, you're assisting divinity. You're assisting divinity in the making, basically assisting the human to open up those doors and realize that magnificence that you are seeing in the person, because you can see what magnificence it takes to create that kind of thing that they are experiencing, no matter how dark it is. You can see that, and so you know, if that person can, even in the midst of that darkness, turn around and say, hey, can you give me a hand? Wow. wow, the person heard that call from within, no matter how hard it seemed to be. And yet that light is there, that knowingness. And so you're not looking at that person from a point of superiority, that you're somehow better or know more. You're looking at that person from a point of reverence, of thank you for allowing yourself to go through this experience, because it enriches all of us.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. And it really makes me reflect too, because there's like a meme I love is that the more you're awakened, the less you disturb others' slumber. So when you realize that they are on a mission, it may seem like slumber, but it's human slumber, not divinity. Divinity is a wide awake all the time
Yeah,
in
yeah,
everybody. So instead of trying to convert people forcefully, right, which the history of denominational religion has had a terrible track record of actually
yeah.
saving souls, um, saving souls, right? So it becomes, like you say, I don't walk into Seattle Children's Hospital with the same outlook that I first did, where, oh my gosh, this is horrible, is this happening to all these kids? And it is their human experience. It's horrible, it's horrific, but
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
so much more behind it. There's so much more. And like you say, when people are ready, when they're open, divinity's here and it works through us all.
Yeah. It
That's
works
when we
through
answer the
every
call.
single one, no matter where each one is on their journey, and no matter what they are experiencing.
Yeah,
I mean, even an assassin can, in the moment of killing, realize, wait a minute, what am I doing here? I mean, because at the end of the day, it doesn't make any difference, because that person is gonna come back again.
right, right,
Now with a little bit of dark humor.
right. That's pretty dark. Not everybody will grasp that, but I get it. So what you're touching on is something, one of your quotes is, you talk about the moment of realization, which we just described mine, we just described others. So let's go back a little bit for you and talk about
Well,
your journey a little bit in your moments of realization. How did you get
yeah,
to be
because
where you are?
they have been different moments of realization. I would say the first big moment of realization was the death of my grand well, the first one was that I wanted to be a journalist, and then I went to university and discovered that I didn't want to be a journalist, because the mass media was just such a big lie. Anyway, so
Yes,
that
yes,
was a big moment of realization, and where I really questioned myself. I mean, I had been questioning myself about what's the meaning of life, why am I here, what am I doing here, for like forever. I mean, since my early teens, even in my childhood, it was a question for me. But when I had this passion, because I love writing, oh my God, I'm going to be a journalist, and I'm going to be able to share the truth about these things that are happening in the world, and there's so much bad going on, so much pain, and then I go to university, and I have all of these teachers that are owners of, newspapers and TV channels, and these real big shots, and all that, and I start realizing, wait a minute, where oh, wait a minute, but does mass media really talk about the truth of what's going on? I mean, this is all made up for different kinds of points of view, and oh gosh, where do I sit in the middle of this? And so that was a big moment.
mm-hmm.
Then that was such a big moment that from then on I decided to go into deeper oblivion. But I didn't become a journalist.
Yeah,
And then when my grandfather died later on, it was again, I loved him really, really a lot, and he was like a father to me. And he died all of a sudden from a heart attack, and I wasn't ready for that. And that made me question, my grandfather was this man who worked so hard all his life, and he worked to give us a better life, which is the main, like people say they do that, right? But they don't do that for that reason, but that's the reason that they say they're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I was like, wait a minute. And I, at the time, was a workaholic. And my life didn't make much sense. So when he died, I started looking at my own life and questioning, what am I doing? I mean, why do I do the things I do? For, I mean, what reason? What is there in this life? And then a year later, I got pregnant from my first daughter. And that was a big, big one. Because pregnancy brings in the enhanced light of the soul that's coming in. And I usually tell my daughter, you were the one who got me divorced from your dad. But I mean, playfully, we
Yeah.
share this
Yeah.
playfully, and made me realize I need to discover who I am. Because that's when I was pregnant, I was made to stop for a few weeks at the beginning, because I didn't know I was pregnant, and I was a fitness instructor, and I just did so much exercise. It was just crazy. Anyway, I was then I realized I was pregnant and I was about to miscarry. And so I was made to stop for over 2 weeks. And that for me was just crazy. I mean, stopping for 2 weeks was like, what is this? Now what do I do with myself? I was busy all the time,
Yeah.
And that made me stop and look at my relationship, my job, my business. Actually, I had a business. I started my business at 23. I've always been a bit precocious. It's like I came into this lifetime. Let's get this all done fast, so then we can get on to the good stuff.
Yeah. And here you are. And here you are. Thank goodness.
So it was like a bit of like that. And then a few years later, I started with meditation. I read a book. The first thing was a book by Deepak Chopra called Synchro Destiny.
Yeah.
And in that book, he teaches how to meditate. And so from there, I started to meditate. And then a person invited me to go and do a Reiki course. And then I did, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 different courses in the same year, like crazy amounts of, oh my God, wow, yeah, that's it. Oh, I know that. And, that real, wow, yes, it's this. And at that time, I felt my third eye was like one of those black and white TVs with no image, where there's only static on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't see anything through it. It was just static when I started the Reiki. And after a while, I just started seeing colors, light, images, this, that, and whoa, what's this? And then I started having recollections of past lifetimes. They just came, like, all of a sudden. And I'm like, whoa, my God, blimey. And then, so I went through loads of different spiritual practices, and they were all magnificent and helped me with my healing process with my body. I was very sickly. Like I always had some kind of an ailment
Mm-hmm.
when I was a child and a teenager, and even in my adult years. And so through these spiritual practices and knowing myself more, going into the emotions, etc., I started healing all of the different issues, many of them incurable, which I don't have anymore. So at some point, I came across the Crimson Circle, which is a sort of portal to awakening as well. And Geoffrey Hoppe channels Tobias at the time, and through that, I came across the concept of aspects of personality and what that looks like, and what what is called the sexual energies virus, which is basically the victim, abuser, savior triangle, and how it plays out in all of humanity just for the purpose of separation until we are ready to transcend that triangle and come into reunion. And so I came across all of those teachings and practiced them myself. And I came across this lady called Norma Delaney. And Norma Delaney she passed away a year and a half ago, was called the Doctor of Breath. And basically she was incarnating Kuan Yin in the sense that she was the most compassionate presence I have ever come across. And so this lady, she became my sort of my mentor, but in the sense she was who I looked at from within, like, okay, so how would she transcend this? Through compassion. Through compassion. The answer was always compassion, compassion, compassion. And so through the breath that I learned with her, and it's the most simple thing, it's just inhaling and exhaling through the nose. It's really, there's nothing to it, not rocket science. But what I learned from her really was the compassion. So that's why I call what I do the compassionate breath, because it's coming into that space of soul where there is endless compassion. And so all of these aspects of personality that I started perceiving with much more clarity were then able to find me somewhere, because I wasn't all over the place then. I started becoming more and more present, so these parts of me could come back to me, back into my wholeness. And this also happened through a relationship which I had with my son's father, which was very triggering. And at the time, I started looking at that relationship and at him not as a trigger, but as my liberation. So many times during that relationship, I wanted to leave, oh my God, I can't take this anymore. I want to go away. And I would hear my soul saying, no, 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 we stay longer. Just be patient. And so there, each time I saw something that made me angry, that made me sad, that made me whatever in the other person, I turned inside and realized, oh, this is me. And so these aspects of different lifetimes, because I started inviting I said, I invite all of my lifetimes back home, all of them. So, as you can imagine, this was an avalanche, like sort of like a huge tsunami.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, this is never gonna end. But yet, I had this steadfast determination that, first of all, I knew I couldn't stay in that tsunami, right? So I just had to keep on moving on. I just had to keep on allowing. Okay, come. Okay, and I knew so well that I couldn't go into those aspects, because each time I got lost in any of those parts of personality, it hurt like hell. It even hurt more than perceiving the whole thing and just staying riveted and firmly present for it all to come back. So that's what made me not get lost so often, because it just hurt more than staying present. That's all. It was just so much at the same time. Until we got divorced, we separated, and then a year or so later, all of a sudden, one night, I had this huge fear come up, like huge terror come up. And for the very first time, I smiled and I wasn't afraid of the terror. And in that moment, everything collapsed inside of me. It's like I just sort of, in a sense, disappeared. and in another sense was fully and wholly here. So my mind went blank, everything went silent, but on the other hand, this huge joy, this huge love, this all encompassing presence was just all that I was. And so no more could I see separation, no more could I see any judgment, any whatever. There was just peace and silence within. And then from that day on, this was on the 11th of April 2013, from that day on, it was a whole new life experience. So it's basically as if in that moment I died,
Mhm.
and but I didn't need to leave the body. I kept this body and came into a new life. So this new life that I came into was so completely different that I had to relearn how to think, because my brain and my mind process wasn't functioning the way it used to. Because I mean, it was all so quiet. There, there's there's not 300 thoughts going around at the
Yeah.
same time. It was all just silent, and I didn't know how to think. And so that very same day, during the day, I had to go and teach one or two English classes, because at the time I was an English teacher. And I just went. I felt so ethereal for the first weeks.
Yeah.
I kept on sort of pinching my body. See, I'm here. Okay, right. This is a real experience.
Yeah.
So I got to the school, go into the classroom, and I'm looking at all of these people, and just, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing here. And I remember having to explain some grammar, and I didn't know. I didn't know how to explain it because I couldn't remember. So I turned to the board, to the whiteboard, and I just started writing. And then it was all there on the board, and then I could explain it.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. It's like you're talking about the death of the ego, or the death of the facets of your ego, the human side.
Yes.
It's like a near death experience
I
without
had
the
no idea
actual.
who I
Right?
was.
Yeah.
Really, it was that total sort of I don't know, but I don't care. I mean, I went through that many times during that time, like more between 2008 and 13. I went through that many times, but that time it was for good. Like, I have no idea whatsoever. I mean, I mean, I know I have the kids and all that, but I didn't feel identified even as a mother. It was
Mm.
like just such a strange thing. But then, of course, having the knowingness that I have to get in the car and go to this place and do that, but so it took me, like, I'd say 2 years to get more accustomed to that and really start getting into people and things. It was very painful for a while physically, especially in my stomach, because I became hypersensitive for a while. So, because the body was so ethereal, the kind of frequency I was in and the kind of frequency I was then interacting in wasn't like that,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like, but then, okay, just breathe, just breathe. It's okay. This too shall pass. And it did. And what's happened from then till now is that periodically I go through these upgrades.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like the physical body is always evolving into more of its lightness, or into more of the soul's lightness, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And whenever I'm going through that upgrade period, it is a period where it's even harder to think than it usually is.
Mhm.
So it's sort of like I usually have no idea, but in those periods I really have no idea at all. And then um it's also physically more challenging because in those in between periods I become hypersensitive.
Mhm.
And so when I'm working with people, then I feel their aspects, and because I work a lot with people's dark side, because
Yeah.
that's the part that they fear looking at.
Mhm.
And so then during the night and that, I feel it a lot in my heart, and then I have to just, okay, go to whoever you belong to, just leave me alone. Because I can't be your home. You have to go to the person you belong to.
Right. Yeah.
It's like this strange kind of thing. And then when the shift is done, then I feel great again. Like then the body becomes stronger, even healthier. It's like my health is always upgrading.
Yeah.
And I've noticed especially in the last year, rejuvenation is really happening at a very visible level, like rejuvenation of the skin, the hair, the muscles, the joints. That has been happening all of this time, but now it's really whoa. It's like, oh my god, my knees don't crackle all the time now. Oh wow, I've even got less white hair growing, and it's like it's so fascinating.
Oh my gosh, it is fascinating. And I wish we had a couple more hours because this is this is really getting deep because I resonate with so much of what you're talking about. Our stories can be completely different, but
Yeah.
the core is the same. And it's the same for everybody that I've worked with that, goes through this paradigm shift. And if you think about what your trajectory was in college and what my trajectory was prior to my son's incident, right before his diagnosis, we're out of alignment with our soul's potential. And it's
Definitely.
just constantly amazes me how the universe, how divinity uses people in the 3D to alter our course, to close the gap between where we are and where we are supposed to be.
Yeah.
And what looks like a slip and a fall or bang your head or a car accident or, a human bad thing is actually divinity adjusting you on your path. And if, it's like I tell people, you think the wind blows, but it doesn't. A low pressure system draws air from a high pressure system and creates what we call wind. If
Mm-hmm.
there's a small differential between the high and the low, then a little breeze blows. But if there's a big differential from where you're at and where you're supposed to be, a
There's a
storm will
hurricane.
hit. There's
Yeah.
a tsunami will hit, right? So it's so true. It's so universally true to all of us. And I think it's such a beautiful story and witnessing, because when people come to me, when they come to you, when they're out of sorts, when they are not in alignment and they're having 3D issues, this is the path out. This is witnessing how we get from the wrong trajectory to the right trajectory of our soul's potential and purpose. So it's extremely beautiful to hear and witness how we go from where we're headed to where we belong. And
Yeah.
the feeling that your care recipients get about wanting to stay, like, hey, you got to go home now, is because that divinity they feel in your presence feels like home. It feels like
Yeah.
where they belong. And
Yeah.
they're, a little bit worried that if I leave her office or her presence, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
But
And
it,
it's the aspects that stay. I mean, the
yeah.
person goes wherever, but gosh, it's like, oh my, it's like No. The fears usually come and greet me, the
Yeah.
fears, because the fears are the ones that the person themselves doesn't want. They don't want them. Like, oh, no, that's not me. And so
Yeah.
they just come and visit me and say, sort of, can I stay here for a while? I say, no, so sorry. It's too uncomfortable.
Yes. No, I will listen, but I don't want to own them, right?
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny
Exactly.
because it really parallels. Again, another beautiful parallel is when I'm sitting with somebody to do breath work and they're having trouble focusing because things come into their consciousness. It's like trying to meditate and the monkey mind's chattering. I say, okay, take a post-it note and just with one word or one letter, write down something that represents that bombarding thought or that fear, and then fold it over and set it aside. And we'll do, 15 minutes of that. And I say, okay, well, now hand me your post-it notes and I'll hold them for you while we create sanctuary space with our breath. And
Beautiful.
believe me, I'll give them back to you at the end of the session because I don't want them. I can't carry them for you. But during the next 15 minutes of our breath work, you're not going to be able to do anything about any of those problems that you're writing down on the notepad. So just set them aside and give yourself a break to do the breath work and get to that sanctuary space. And before we run out of time, I want to focus a little bit on breath, because as the core of what you do is surrounded by breath work, and the same
Yeah.
with me. And it's a universal truth, and it's not a surprise at all that it's the core of what we both do and what so many people do, because breath truly is the gateway to everything we're talking about.
Yeah.
Calming the monkey mind, becoming coherent with your heart and mind body. It all starts with the breath, and it starts with the knowledge, the intention, and then the action of doing
Yeah.
the breath. And I know that, I like when I listen to your offerings of breath work, talk about feeling divinity. You are exuding divinity and universal truth with every breath and every word you speak. It couldn't be better. I'm just thrilled to be able to introduce people to your work, to show people what it can feel like to be under your spell, so to speak, and and really get to the core of everything just through the breath.
Yeah, sometimes people get frustrated because my answer is like, sometimes the person say, okay, so there's this part that's this, that, and what do I do? You breathe. And so
Yeah,
my answer
yeah.
is just breathe. It's always the same thing. It's like, gosh, can't you say anything else?
Yeah, it's
Well,
like,
let's just breathe for a while, okay? you know?
yeah, it's like almost too simple, too good to be true. How could
Yeah.
the breath solve all these problems? But it
Yes.
truly is a universal truth. It
And it
really does
does.
work. Yes, I witnessed that as
Serena,
well.
Serena is a very, very dear friend of mine, and is the person that Norma, the lady that I spoke about, has mentored for 25 years, and she was a very multiple, over 300 split personalities,
Mm,
and just with the breath work, just with the breath, over a long period, yes, 25 years, and now we've also been working together. Um, she is today the most beautiful, compassionate human being that can share so much wisdom on how to overcome the hardest possible pains just by focusing on the breath. So I mean, if someone like Serena, who has been through literally hell
yeah, yeah,
in this lifetime, can well, it's from other lifetimes, but she sort of managed to sum it all up just in one
yeah,
lifetime. And if someone who's been through what she has been, can come back together Anyone can. And her book is called I Am Serena. Anyone who would like to read it, it's available. And it's just, and the reason I'm bringing this up is this is exactly, I mean, there's nothing too bad, too complicated, too challenging, too painful that coming into the breath and into alignment cannot dissolve. Nothing, absolutely nothing.
I agree with you 100%, Tanya. That's so beautiful. And it is something that I repeat to every care recipient that I visit with, is that whether it's neuropathy, POTS, Lyme disease, any of the diagnoses that we get, there is nothing that can't be unwound by just going to our breath, in training our heart into homeostasis, into coherence. And from there is the unwinding and being witnessed. It's like Dr. Joe Dispenza has a beautiful concept, which is a universal truth, is that, as we talked about, the universe wants to know every experience from every possible angle. That's why we're all so different. We're all a different perspective, a different fractal of a different spectrum from anybody else. And when someone like you or my son or Sharon or any of the people that I've visited with, when they experience something nobody else has experienced, and they're out there all alone, they're in the quantum unknown, right? They're out there, nobody else has experienced it. If we as care providers go out there with them, truly be where they are in that moment, and connect through the breath, through the heart, through the soul, through divinity, and witness their wellness back into humanity, then all of humanity can follow that path to wellness. Once one person does it, the rest of humanity can do it. And that is the value, that is the honor that I have in the role that I play in witnessing that back in. And I truly, it's not that I believe that, I know it. It is part of my physiology, that witnessing what McCoy went through and being there with him has now blazed a trail for every other pediatric patient or adult to follow. It's like the recipe for success, although their story could be totally different. Their situation could be totally different. No one can compare one human story to another, but the path back to wellness is always the same. And it's through the gate of the breath is the gateway. Absolutely.
Sometimes I've even had, interactions with people who believe themselves to be bipolar, or who believe themselves to be I'm addicted, or addicted to drugs, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And the core and the crux of the issue is, until when are you gonna believe that you are bipolar? Because as long as you keep that belief system going, because it was created for a purpose, then it will stay there. But if you come into the breath, there is no bipolar in the breath. There is no schizophrenic. There is no whatever. There is just your wholeness. And so by coming into that coherence that you're speaking of, into that wellness, into that wholeness, all of those things that seem to be diseases in terms of illness, they become just dis-ease, in the sense that they are discomforts, because we are attached to something that is not the truth of who we really are. But that bipolar experience, for instance, will have brought a huge level of wisdom, a new experience, and coming all the way through bipolarity back into coherence will bring that possibility for so many more. And so each one, and I keep on repeating this that you're saying, each one that goes through their own wall of fire, their own biggest challenge, and comes on the other side to realize, oh, now I'm this, is doing it for themselves, obviously, first and foremost, and that's the only one you can do it for. But, of course, providing it for the whole of humanity. So, this sense of having to save anyone is irrelevant, because once you have removed yourself from your own pain, you are doing that. I mean, that is a service provided. Immediately it becomes available in the matrix that we all connect through
Yes.
for
Yeah.
anyone who wants to tap into it.
Amen, sister. I love that. And it's without the witness, the wisdom is lost.
Yeah.
It's not incorporated. So that's the important part, is we can go through human difficulties, and they're just human difficulties. But if we are true about where we're at, and we use the breath and coherence and are witnessed back into wholeness, then the wisdom is absorbed and expands the collective consciousness. That's
Yes.
exactly, and I know it. I know it to be true. And that's a beautiful place for us. I want to respect your time. We're a few minutes over, but we're going to have to do
Oh,
this again.
it's been magnificent.
It
Thank
has.
you
It really
so
has.
much, Jeff.
Yes. And
We
I'm going
could
to,
go on forever.
and you know what? I think we should.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just won't be on this exact date and time. But like I said before, we need to visit more. And I really, really, truly appreciate you. You've meant a lot to me in the last year or so that we've known each other. And I really look forward to our future together to play in the field.
Oh,
And
thank you so much. Me too, Jeff. Really and honestly, it's like we were talking at the beginning, and I was saying that it's it's such a relief, a heartwarming relief to know that people like you, that you are on Earth right now at this very same moment, because it makes a whole lot of a difference. Because I know and I feel each one of us that is resonating and allowing this divinity into their own lives. And of course, then it just has to spread out. I mean, it cannot be contained.
no,
Makes this just the perfect place to be. It's
yes,
like, it's like we provide the perfect place for each other, each one of us, that is precisely allowing more and more. And when you were saying that, we all come to a threshold, which is a threshold that no one has ever walked
yeah,
through. Once you come to a certain point in your journey, and the reason I'm mentioning it, this is I believe you probably are experiencing that. Then it's a constant threshold. So, like, for me now, it's a constant exploration. It's a constant. I've never been here before. I've never done this before.
isn't
Constantly.
isn't that beautiful though? It's just
It's
new
just
creation.
amazing.
It is beautiful. And I witnessed that for you and for myself and for everybody else out there. The potential is there. And
Yes.
we just have to step through that gateway of the breath, and the threshold is always changing, always new, always expanding. And
And this part of witnessing, some people have a bit of a difficulty, so to speak, with sometimes asking for support when they are on their journey.
yeah,
And because the ego somehow has this idea, of course, the ego wants to, I can do this myself, and I'm not gonna ask anyone for support. But as you were saying, just like with everything else in this reality, um, only the viewing or the witnessing of it makes it real.
yep,
So, whenever there are two that gather within divinity, that provides the materialization of that divinity. It just becomes tangible. So it's sort of like, yes, you are the only one walking through your thresholds, and no one will walk through them for you. No one. And no one can ever know what it's like to walk through your thresholds. They are yours to walk through. No one will take that away from anyone, and no one can experience that in the exact same way. But the fact that we are witnessing each other walking through those thresholds provides an open view of that. It's no longer hidden or secret. It is common knowledge.
Yes.
From the moment it is witnessed.
Exactly. Amen to that. And it's like quantum physics teaches us nothing happens in the universe without the observer.
There, that's it.
It's it.
Precisely.
And that's the core of where science meets spirituality.
Yeah.
Because it's a universal truth. Whether you call it science or spirituality, it's a universal truth.
Yeah.
And we observe for each other and make it reality.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Oh wow, hey. What a wonderful evening.
Yes.
Well, you're in the morning, right?
What a wonderful morning, and I get to eat some lunch. So I thank you, Tania. You're gorgeous, you're beautiful soul, and I love you for what you do and who you are. And I love playing in the field of divinity with you. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to talking with you more soon.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's so good to be loved by you and to love you too. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Okay. Until next time, sweetie.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you, everyone who's been here creating this landscape with us.
Absolutely. And I'll be live again next week. So look for me on Facebook, and I'll post all of Tania's contact information on the link of this recording. So thank you, everybody.